Welcome back to Fall of the Samurai Abridged Ill Edition. In the previous part we were able to win some battles against the time limit first and foremost. We captured Tsushima and stopped it falling to rebels with a bit of trickery. And with that done we then went to invade the mainland. We successfully ambushed the Hiroshima clan's army, and now we're going to move on from here to try and get some territory as a result of that win. You can see there's a somewhat unguarded castle in front of us here, but it does have a big garrison and we do have to take winter attrition to get there, but we're doing it anyway. In the other direction there's more Hiroshima territory, and a bit of ship scouting reveals it's barely defended at all, so with that I decided to form up this second army to go over and do something about that. We arrive at Negato Castle. I was a little bit skeptical about this balance bar because it looks like a free auto-resolve, but given the amount of stuff inside the castle I thought from my previous experience it would be worse than it looks, and I think this might be one of those cases, but it's not too bad really. We take more losses than that balance bar might suggest, but not a massive amount of losses, and because they're distributed so evenly across the army, it's nice and easy to replenish them back. So we just take that auto-resolve and take the castle. That's actually as far as we can go in this direction because now it's the Chosu to our west and the Iwakuni to our north, so we'll just sit there for now. We need to instead press in the other direction. We're going here towards Suo Fields. There's an army in our way that gets out of the way but still is in reinforcement range of the settlement, or the fields I guess. So we get a relatively balanced setup where the enemy army is split between two groups, so of course in this situation we can try to attack in such a way that we fight the reinforcement group on its own to make this easy. This fails immediately just because I deployed in the wrong place. I thought they'd be towards the bottom corner, but no, they were a bit higher up the map than I thought. This means they come onto the field closer to the enemy's original deployment position than I am, so I won't be able to catch up to them. Although there was an exception, because one unit of levy infantry for some reason stayed behind. I almost didn't see them because their little marker on the minimap didn't show up, it was on the line on the edge. Eventually I spotted them, I sent a few guys over to deal with them. They weren't paying too much attention, so they just ran here into my Naginata run-in. That's going to be a relatively easy fight for us to win, obviously. And to make it a bit better, I'm throwing a general in here, but because we're charging uphill, you can see it completely destroys the charge. We lose all of our stamina, all of our speed, and probably all of our charge bonus as we enter the combat. But once we're there, in melee, we're going to have the stats to defeat those levy infantry, so that'll be fine in the end. And then I'm just going to have to wait ages for these guys to walk over and rejoin our formation. You can see on the minimap, we're setting up in front of the enemy far away, so here we are a while later when the real fight starts. I'm using my sharpshooters and my British light infantry long range units to just snipe away at the enemy and grab some kills early on. A few units will come forwards in response to this and die some more, but the army as a whole, the enemy army, just stays still. This is exactly what we want really, because we can aggro away unit after unit and kill them. A classic Shogun 2 trick seems to be one of the main weaknesses of Shogun 2's AI, that it lets you do this. For some reason I put my archers in the sharpshooter line as well, and they do actually get a chance to grab some kills there, so that proved to be useful in the end. We're going to cut now to a bit later, when after I sniped the enemy for a while, we finally got them to fully aggro and they started coming at us. I've pulled my sharpshooters and light infantry now back behind the regular infantry to give them a chance to do something. Here we get attacked by Revolver Cav, a deadly unit. They can kill us real fast and start taking big casualties on the unit they're targeting. But they're fighting in front of the whole line, getting shot so much in return that they don't last very long. They don't even get a chance to empty their first revolver's worth of bullets. Plus we're throwing spears in there as well. So that's that. Now the enemy are melee charging our centre. Some Cav made a bit of headway, but we're counter-charging with a few of our own melee units, and overall it's going to be okay, especially because, as mentioned in the past, line infantry aren't that much worse than spear levy in melee, and once they're leveled up they're not worse at all. Looks like their general is slowly hacking his way through our ranks here, or maybe that's one of the general's bodyguards, can't remember what they look like anymore. But that should be fine, he's probably not going to kill all of us, and on the left flank we're slightly outflanking this enemy blob with a whole bunch of melee units. The enemy's morale's going to be low, because they've lost so much stuff already. They probably lost their general soon as well. And the battle ends when I went around on the right flank to take out all of their ranged units sitting at the back. There weren't that many, it was mostly just spear levy in this army. And that's that really, we pick up the win and take this territory, also mostly killing the army outside, to the extent that we don't have to worry about it anymore. Our army's looking fine, so we'll grab a turn of replenishment here, and then up the road the next castle is also controlled by the Hiroshima clan, so we can target that as well once we're ready. Although it doesn't stay that way for long actually, things don't quite go as I wanted. In the west, I was thinking of going to war with the Iwakuni clan. You might remember that was the clan I wanted to attack when I came to this region of the map originally. Thought, well, we might as well press on and finish them off just to give our army something to do. But I do wait a while before I do that. Here's what I was alluding to just now. The castle I was going to take from the Hiroshima has been taken by the Tsuwano instead. They are also a shogunate faction, so they're also fair game. We could just declare war on them. They do have some more regions to the north in the Iwami area. For this turn though, I pretty much just sat around. I can't quite remember why. It might have been because I wanted to grab more replenishment before attacking this Iwakuni area. I probably could have attacked them this turn, but here we are in the next turn, where things are actually better than they were last turn, so it was the right decision to wait, although, as I said, not sure why I even made it. Probably would have been more efficient to just charge on in. The downside to waiting is that this other clan, the Matsuyama, have now taken Aki, so we still don't have a chance to take it, but what we can do is use them to get into war with the Tsuwano and the Iwakuni, and also grab an alliance with them, since they are a relatively powerful local imperial clan, so that will help out. With that, there's now nothing obvious we can do on this frontier, but we can walk past them. I got military access in that alliance deal. So we'll start walking to Iwami with that army, and our initial army will now go after the Iwakuni's territory, and as you can see, the army that was defending it is just not there, so that's going to make this way easier. I was planning to fight that army, although in retrospect, you'll see this actually makes things a bit worse for us. You'll see what I mean in a second. So first, we move on in and take Negato fields, that's easy enough. The Iwakuni are defeated, sort of, anyway. And the next obvious thing for us to do would be to move up the road and also attack the Tsuwano. Now we can come at their territory from two sides, bit of ship scouting. Sees not much there actually, not even a full stack of troops around. They're probably at war with someone else, they're certainly at war with the Matsuyama. So they may be busy and will be able to take advantage of this. But the Iwakuni not being dead thing comes about because you can see their army actually was just hiding in the territory, so now we still have to fight them. This is the thing I've mentioned in the past, where if you destroy a clan while their last army is still in their territory, that army doesn't disappear, so we still have to deal with them. Unfortunately, we can't venture too far from Negato fields without public order issues, so that's what I'm doing here, trying to sort something out. We can bring over Ishin Ishi to sort that out over time. And I also just don't want to walk too far away from the settlement with my army in case we need to go back and garrison it. And you see that in the next turn. The enemy walked around me, I attacked them and they went off into the forest where it's going to use all of our movement to get them. Instead I tried to go back to the town, actually couldn't. Ended up accidentally setting an ambush next to it, which might have been a good idea because the enemy army may have come to attack the town and got ambushed. But you'll see that doesn't work out in the end. Meanwhile, we are actually making that attack against the Tsuwano. We just gradually walked over there with our second army, and they haven't done anything. Their forces aren't really moving about. They're just sitting here with all of their settlements empty. So we take the first one with not much ado. Now we'll sit here and see how the enemy react. In the next turn, I am once again going after the Iwakuni rebels, I guess they are now. And once again they run away. They've gone off to the coast, so now we can't reach them this turn. Might be able to reach them without my artillery or something, I didn't even check here. I think I wanted to sit around and try to get them to come back. I wasn't too interested in pursuing them, because then you have to spend another turn afterwards coming back to the road, things like that. In the next turn, they're on the other side of me, I attack and they run away. Again, and it's another case where we're not going to be able to catch up to them. However, by this point I've spammed over so much stuff that we may be able to hold the settlement with no troops here, or without our main army I should say. So this army doesn't have to go after the rebels. We could walk past and help out with the actual war, and the rebels might eventually be defeated by the garrison. That's what I was thinking. Meanwhile, with the Tsuwano war, you can see both sides are just trying to ambush each other. It happens that we discovered the enemy army, so we find out about this. And in response I thought, well, if you're not going to defend your settlements, I might just go for them. We could easily go forward and just kill their army in this situation, but I thought we can probably do something more annoying. Let's go and take their main settlement over here, their capital and their most well-defended location. It's going to have a castle, and it's got some garrison stuff. The balance bar's not enough to auto-resolve, however, I was pretty confident we could do this easily with a manual resolve, because you can see we've got 3 sharpshooting units, including the British rifle troops. And with those guys, we can outrange everything inside the castle. We also have naval support fire, and that goes pretty well. We get a few shots onto the walls and blow up a whole bunch of the defenders early on. That's good stuff. After that, we want to go through the very long process of killing enemies behind cover. We can stand just outside of their range with our sharpshooters and British troops, and far away we'll eventually kill them. And what tends to happen is once you've killed a bunch of them, they'll reform and put some more guys in the same place, because that's where the AI thinks it needs to defend. And you'll kill a bunch of them very slowly. Things were a bit easier than that though, because I took some troops into the castle and the AI didn't react at all, so I was able to start attacking the guys defending the wall from the inside as well. Also captured one of their towers in the interior, and that was gradually sniping away at enemies as well. So cutting now to a bit later, I also stormed the middle of the castle thinking let's just go for the capture point, because we can take that and then the AI will respond by pulling everything back off the walls to come and retake it. But it's kind of too late. We've got enough stuff towards the middle of the castle that we can swarm the capture point area and keep the enemy off it. So we cut now to a couple of minutes later when the enemy are trying to fight for the capture point, but they couldn't, and the battle just comes to an end because of that. A decisive victory, and indeed, we didn't really lose many troops, so that's what I wanted to get out of that fight. Of course, we're going to be inside the castle now, so the enemy are going to struggle to take it back off us. We've also spammed a whole bunch of spear levy at that fields region we took recently, so that's also going to be a hard place for them to take. Overall, the Swano are in trouble right now. They spent their turn moving slightly towards Iwami Fields, and that was a critical mistake, because I immediately noted, checking the tooltips here, that they're technically in our territory in that spot. That means if we swoop in towards Iwami Port, we can do the thing. We can take out their faction in such a way that their army will be deleted, and that we never had to fight them. Truly a strategy worthy of the Master of Strategy mod. So there we go, we move on in, auto-resolve that tiny garrison, and that's that. The situation is cleared up, and we're now actually in a pretty stable situation, because further down the coast to the northeast there, it's just the Matsue, who are also an imperial faction with great relations with us, and we're allied to the guys who join our territory on the south coast. So really, all we have to do now is kill the Iwakuni rebels, and we'll actually have nothing left. We'll have to start coming up with new strategies. You can see I chased them further and still didn't manage to get that fight. I have though at least got the conversions over here done. These fields places convert real fast, so we can move on up to start converting these Swano lands instead. Then I got a hint for what I should do next, because the Chosu are doing agent actions against me. That's a sure sign that they're planning to attack me. It's these guys over here in the corner. And also taking them out would just be neat, because they're sitting awkwardly in the corner of our block of territory. If they weren't there, it would look better. So that made up my mind. We're going to kill them soon. But first, I finally got a chance to go after the rebels, because when they ran away this time, they couldn't run quite far away enough due to the way the mountains are set up. So I could pursue and start this battle. The balance bar's not good enough for a free auto-resolve, I thought. But their army's basically just our army, but worse. Therefore, all we need to do is walk at them and we should be guaranteed a win. We got some good terrain too, which helps out. They started off by sending some revolver cav at our left flank, and, well, that wasn't especially effective. A lot of them got shot on the way in, but while we were reloading, they did get some volleys into our ranks. These guys really need to go behind the lines where they can just kill a whole unit in short order. But in front, they get killed in short order, and that's the end of that attack at least. They've also got some sharpshooters, another key unit, but I've got my artillery focusing them down so they can't sit at the bottom of the hill and snipe away at us. Then they had another cavalry attack, this time on the right flank, moved some spears to stop them in this case. Once they're locked down, we can get some gunners to shoot just about over the top of the spears, probably shooting a bunch of our own men. Since the horses raise the enemy up, you can kind of shoot over the top of your troops and hit them more than you're hitting your own men. So that works out. Now the real battle begins, and this battle is going to be pretty hands-off. Pretty much both sides have a bunch of ranged gun infantry, our guns are more numerous and a bit better and more experienced, so we'll just stand around on top of our hill and shoot down. We've also got some artillery and some mortars that will gradually add to our kill count. Plus the enemy tend to be not so efficient with their shooting, doing things like moving forward sometimes during the battle and taking extra volleys. They did have some melee troops also though, and it looks like they made it to our lines here, albeit in a depleted form. And they didn't last very long once we turned to face them. Pretty much the battle's over at this stage because they lost enough of their levied troops in this gun battle, which I've pretty much entirely cut out, that they got the army losses morale debuff and just started leaving. Just before I was able to get my cav rear attack that I was planning, I managed to kill some more of the sharpshooters there, and that brings the battle to an end. So this Iwakuni rebellion is over. We've finally secured the area. This army is now going to be stuck in impassable terrain, or nearly impassable terrain I should say. It's going to take us an entire turn just to get back down to the road, but eventually they'll be back into action. Meanwhile, the troops up in the Swano territories are being loaded onto ships to get out of there, because I want to pull them back down for this Chosu situation. It's going to be much faster to sail down here than to walk, and that's proved right here, because I thought I'll walk the other army over, and you can see we barely make any progress for our first turn of movement. It'll take us a while, but eventually we'll get down there to where the Chosu are and finish them off, and during that time, since we've got some spare money, I'm going to start recruiting a bunch more troops. Up here at Iwami, we've captured a high-level samurai dojo, so we can recruit some of the decent samurai units here. They're expensive and they take ages to train, but there's some advantage in taking them, because this mod has unit caps. I can only have one more unit of line infantry, I think, for the entire campaign. So we're going to have to field some armies of just samurai because we have no other options for recruitment as we go on. That should make things a bit more interesting, I think. We're cutting now to a while later, when I was ready to attack the Chosu. There's me making the declaration. By this time I've now got a third frontline army, mostly full of trash, as you can see here, just a ton of spear levy forming the core of the force. I'm going to use these guys to besiege the enemy settlement. That's not a very good situation, but now we can bring in other stuff to turn that around. Wanted to land the troops from the sea at first, realised this enemy gunboat is stopping me doing that. We just tell them to go away. Now the challenge of getting your men off the ships begins. First, the usual mistake. I'd given a landing order and it only lands an agent on board the ship. This also blocks you from landing troops in the same spot, so it's extra annoying. In this case, I managed to work out how I could get my men off the ships, and there we go, so it's not quite a disaster. With that, we can also bring over our third army. Going to do some trickery here. We actually can't reach the front lines with the third army this turn unless we do this. Popping it in and out of the settlement allows you to move a bit on the map without it costing any movement points. So with that we can get into reinforcement range, and now we just sit here. What I really wanted to do is move around the castle and take out the enemy forces outside so that this balance bar right here wouldn't be quite so even, and we could have an easier attack on the castle. This turns out not to be required because they tried to sally in their turn, and the sally balance bar was much better by the looks of things. Not quite sure why, but we'll just take this auto-resolve. I was a bit skeptical given what we've seen so far, but the result turns out to be really good actually, probably because the enemy are just packed out with levies and they don't do very well in auto-resolve. So they die, our losses are just fine, and that's really going to be the end of the Chosu War right there, because we can just auto-resolve them again in our turn. We get the same balance bar, the enemy die just as much, and that is that. We can pick up a new general from it as well. I actually lost a general in this campaign because those Chosu agents killed one of my leaders. Actually, I think they wounded him while he was there, so that's annoying. We've ended up with the same number of active generals that we had before. All's well that ends well. Now that that's over, we need to decide what we're actually going to do next. We need a bit of a meatier project than that. And the main thing I was thinking is about going down to attack this grey faction in Kyushu. They've got a block of territory here and they are a shogunate faction. The other two imperial factions, the Satsuma and the Harado, are at war with each other. So I started thinking we'll just come in and set up a little base in the local shogunate territory and then perhaps intervene one way or the other to actually take a good portion of Kyushu, just because it's more efficient than sailing off somewhere else. I did say earlier I wasn't planning on doing this, but we'll see what happens when we get there basically. We're going to start racing forwards now for a bit because, not much happened for a while. I just started building up my forces here. You can see I've got a bunch of stuff back up in Iwami that we can bring down towards the front lines. And I've now got quite a few fleets to ferry stuff about, so we can do a big naval invasion of the eastern side of Kyushu. There is a bit of trouble back home actually at Nagasaki port. We're now going to face this crime allegiance thing coming back, because I accidentally moved my local Ishinishi away thinking he didn't need to be there. He's on that ship just there. But no, we do need him, so now I'm like, can I just recruit another one to replace him rather than going back with the ship since it was ferrying troops away as well. I couldn't do that because of agent limits, so I can get another agent who I'd forgotten about up there on Tsushima to kill himself. Then we can recruit a new one down here and eventually we'll be able to restore our allegiance. But we won't be able to stop a rebellion before then, and this time we don't have an army there to just stop the rebellion from actually taking the settlement. So, bit of an issue that's about to come up. In the meantime, you can see we are preparing for our naval invasion in a very obvious way, just gradually building up ships in the bay to see what the enemy do about it. I don't think the AI really detects you building up troops like this or anything, so you're free to be pretty brazen and just wait for the moment when everything is ready and then go for it. And here you can see another stack comes to get involved. We've got like 3 or 4 armies we can use here. I'm only going to use 3 because I think in the next turn after this I decided it might be better to have one of the armies remain in reserve, especially because we might be about to lose part of our home region to rebels. The other thing I wanted to try before I invaded was to use the invasion to get an alliance with one of the 2 imperial factions on the island. This ultimately failed, so I end up just declaring war, naturally just us against them, no allies or vassals called in. And now we'll have another landing troops challenge. This one wasn't so bad. There's a strip of landable terrain right next to the port type region. So we can dump down a couple of stacks right there, and that's that. And as I said, we're going to dump down only 3 of the 4 stacks for now. The enemy, the Oka clan, have no reaction to this. They just ignore me. So in the next turn, we take that settlement with an easy enough auto-resolve. And now we're in the money really. We just need to advance on, besiege that nearby castle, and while it is fully garrisoned, we can bring up a lot of stuff to deal with it. This is as far as I've played at the time of this recording, but I'm pretty sure we're going to destroy this relatively small faction. And we'll see what I feel like doing from there. We'll either stay on Kyushu, or we'll do what I originally planned, and that is to crusade off somewhere else in Japan, find some shogunates to kill, and get into that. I might go for that latter option because it's probably going to be more difficult and more interesting. Since we are starting to steamroll already, I'd be willing to make things a bit more challenging just for fun. Maybe I will go for that Republican ending after all, that will screw things up. Well, we'll see. I hope you'll join me for the next part, where I might be a bit less ill.